It's that time of the week, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here with the Ducky and Parker after a absolutely stunning week last week. 11-1 if you watch the show, giving out free money here on Combat Coach. Ian, how are you doing?
I'm good, a little under the weather, but we power through, right? And we got a nice little card tomorrow for UFC. Let's see if we can carry this momentum. I can't promise I'm going to go 11-1 again, but I sure hope so.
Well, that's why people love this sport. It just keeps rolling. We did a Twitter Spaces a couple of days ago, and I thought we would talk about UFC 264, but the fans just wanted to keep it on rolling. So that's what we're going to do here on Combat Coach. We're going to do some more Twitter Spaces and do a little more interaction with the fans as we continue to grow this platform. Thank you to everyone who joined. But today is all about UFC Vegas 31, Makhachev versus Moises. Obviously, a little downer based on what we were going to see with this Max Holloway. Unfortunately, is not able to fight Yair Rodriguez on this card. But the first card coming up from the UFC Apex Center is Alan Badeau, plus 280 versus Rodrigo Nascimento, minus 365. Ian, I don't need you to say the names. I do need a pick.
This one I would probably stay away from. Haven't seen a whole lot from both. When it comes to Badeau, he lost to Tom Aspinall pretty quickly, so you can't really gauge. And same thing with Nascimento. We've seen him win pretty quickly. For me, I would say the under in this fight if you had to play, but this is probably the first time I'm going to say stay away from this one because it wouldn't shock me if the underdog in this division hit.
Coming up next, Francisco Figuereto, minus 310 versus Malcolm Gordon, plus 245. Ian, Figgy's brother, how do you see this going?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Figgy here. Look, at minus 310, this is still a very high number for him. He is the former champ's brother, but Malcolm Gordon just isn't there. I don't think he's UFC level, and I think as long as Figuereto gets his fight to the ground, or if he's going to strike, just don't brawl. He should be okay here. If you're going to play this, parlay it. Otherwise, number's a little high for a straight play.
So speaking of the number being high, do you think that's high because of the actual skill discrepancy, or do you think it's high because of the name?
I don't think the name really plays a lot. I don't know if even Vegas sometimes connects 2 and 2. To me, that would be kind of a crazy situation if you're connecting a family member and that's how the name goes up. For me, it's more about skill. He's won some fights. Malcolm Gordon's been finished very quickly in his last one. So they probably don't think Gordon is UFC caliber, which I don't know if he really is. We haven't seen a whole lot outside of him taking punishment. So I'm going to say minus 310 is probably deserved here based on the lack of success for Gordon, as opposed to the name and the success of older but little Figgy.
And that's why I am the host and you are the capper. So we are going to move right on to get some better betting advice with Miles Johns, minus 170 versus Anderson Dos Santos, plus 150. Ian, I love this matchup. Where do you see it playing out?
I like Miles Johns here. I think he was the better striker. I think he's the better wrestler. What we saw with Dos Santos in his last fight was he just latched onto a very lazy double leg from Day, and he was able to get the guillotine. I think Johns is just a smarter fighter here. We saw in his last fight, his striking has evolved. He went for the finish. I think here, as long as he can keep his head upright when shooting in for an outside single and not get guillotined, I don't see Dos Santos being a threat anywhere else for Miles Johns, and I like Miles here.
Miles Johns, the pick to click for Ian Parker, moving swiftly along. Khalid Taha, minus 140 versus Sergey Marazov, plus 120. The floor is yours.
I like Taha here. His fight against Hani Barcelos really showed his toughness. It showed that he could really stay with that. And I think Barcelos is a much higher ranked guy, or even just on a skill level than Marazov. I also like Taha's finish over Boston Salmon. I think for Sergey, he's a little flat-footed for me in this division. Sometimes he relies on counter as opposed to moving forward. And with Taha, I think Taha will be the faster striker, and I think that's how he gets it done.
Well, and I think that's a real sleeper coming up early on this card. And as we roll swiftly into it, maybe one where you want to take a trip to the bathroom. I don't know. Maybe Ian will give you a prop on this one to make you more interested. But Amanda Lemos, minus 575, prohibitive favorite against Montserrat Ruiz, plus 410. Ian, how do I bet this, or do I stay away?
Yeah, this is another one. If you want to take a stab at something that will probably have a good plus money number, it'd be Lemos by TKO or finish. I know the over here is a high number, but Lemos has got a really good striking. She's a good athlete. She's a highly touted prospect in this division. And I just think she's better everywhere than Ruiz. And she's got that instinct to get fights done. So minus 575 is a reach. That's a little too much. Even on a parlay, I don't think that presents a whole lot of value. I do think Lemos wins. So if you want to play that prop by finish, I think you'll get some good odds there.
It is a fight. Anything can happen, especially when you're minus 575 as a favorite.
Yeah.
Moving along next, Daniel Rodriguez minus 320 versus Preston Parsons plus 250. Plenty of alliteration for my pal, Ian Parker. Pick is yours. Let's go.
I'm a little surprised that this is what Daniel Rodriguez is getting after dominating Mike Perry. Parsons is a newcomer. If you go look at his record, go look at his fights, more of a submission guy. Rodriguez has very good takedown defense. Even when he gets taken down, he's very good at getting against the cage, getting back up. I just think his striking and experience and level of competition who he's fought is going to be too much. So I would throw Rodriguez in a parlay here.
Well, you got to love that and the small cage there. So something to keep in mind as far as the tactics go at the UFC Apex. Coming up next, Rodolfo Vieira -220 versus Dustin Stalphas +180. Ian, a real disappointment out of Vieira last time out. Is he going to get back on the horse this time?
I think he does here. Look, that fight, he just gassed. Otherwise, he looks great. He does what he does.
And he didn't just gas. I mean, he gassed to legendary levels.
It was like literally took the complete air out of his body and he was nothing. Hernandez getting the submission win over him was his first submission in his career and against arguably the one of not top 3 best jiu-jitsu practitioners in the world. It's a nice little tip in his cap. I think Vieira gets it done here, though. Look, if you have to go back and work on cardio, that's really all that I saw in that fight. I don't know if Stalphas, is going to be able to outbox him and prevent the takedown. We've seen Vieira get touched up before. He's bled, still gets the fight to the ground. I think he bounces back here. I have a hard time seeing a guy this good at jiu-jitsu and having already 3 fights in the UFC go on a 2-fight losing streak against a guy in Stalphas. So I'm going to go with Vieira here. -220, though, parlay worthy.
Well, and there's something to be said for being a high-level athlete. You do learn a lot more from a loss like that, So someone like Vieira, who is nicknamed the Black Belt Hunter, he's, as you said, a world-class jiu-jitsu person. You don't get that good at jiu-jitsu without learning from failure. So hopefully he can go out there and right the wrong that was his last performance. Yeah, but coming up next, I am super excited for this fight, Ian. Anytime Jeremy Lil Heathen Stevens is on a card, I'm watching it. +175 versus Mateusz Gamrot -210. I mean, come on. I'm just killing these pronunciations in this card. Ian, give me the picks.
You're doing solid with them. I would definitely give you credit there. Better than me. I like Gamrot here. I just think this is someone who's on the way up as opposed to Stevens, who's kind of on the decline. Stevens is exciting. We know he's going to come to fight. He's going to brawl. However, the one difference we've seen out of him recently as opposed to in the past is we're seeing him get finished. We're seeing him get knocked out. We're seeing him get dropped. Damage is taking its toll on him. Father time is taking over. He's been in the sport for a very long time. Unless he lands that one punch knockout against Gamrot, I don't think he wins. I think his pressure will help neutralize the power of Stevens. I think his wrestling will be there. As long as Gamrot doesn't get into rock'em sock'em robots, the win's his. -210, also parlay worthy. I wouldn't go straight there. That's a little high for my blood. But I do lean Gamrot here.
Well, and as you said, that's a veteran. I think he's going on 15 years in MMA, and MMA doesn't get easier as you get older. That's certainly the case. So
that is a fact.
I think that's a trope that we're going to see here and coming up in the co-main event. Marion Renault +120 versus Miesha Tate -140. Ian, I'm not going to blast your age out here, but Marion Renault is one of the only competitors that is older than you on this card. So how do you see this fight playing out with the return of Miesha Cupcake Tate? I know you're personal friends with Miesha. Let's try and take the personal bias out of it. How do you see this going from a fight analyst point of view?
Well, yeah, my company sponsored Miesha early in her career, along with a bunch of other fighters. Miesha is a pioneer of the sport. She grew with the sport, Bulldog fight, Strikeforce, champ, and then obviously UFC rivalry with Ronda Rousey. She's been around the sport for a while. Her fiance fights in ONE FC. He was in the UFC. So she lives and breathes the sport. For her in her last fight against Raquel Pennington, you saw, in between rounds telling her then boyfriend, I don't have it anymore. I just don't have it anymore. I'm not mentally there. When you're mentally checked out in an MMA fight or in your career, that's when it's time to step away. Otherwise, you just take damage. You lose fights you're not supposed to lose, and you don't want your legacy to be tainted in that way. I think the time away from the cage has been great for her. She's been around ONE FC. She's been around fighters, went and had a family, so she's really had that time to just breathe and kind of get back to whether she wants this. And apparently the hunger, the fire is there. You could go and see how she's training. She's always a hard trainer, when she wrestles. So, her advantage here will be wrestling. The only reason why it's -140 is because she's been away for a very long time. Renault's no slouch. She's tough. I think she's lost her last 4 fights, if I'm correct. The problem is that when you also go into a fight saying I'm retiring, you kind of have nothing to gain. You got nothing to lose. I don't necessarily see her going out guns a-blazing either. I think Miesha, for the first fight back, has to come in here, wrestle, get it done any way she can. I think she can get it by submission, but I think Miesha Tate will win this one by decision.
Well, and I think you illuminated a good point because Miesha said that in the fight, you don't have that mentality, that moment, that I'm not in this is something that she was probably experiencing the entire camp. You know, her preparation was probably hindered by that. Everything that we've seen out of Miesha Tate now is very on point, is very much a new kind of almost release on life for the UFC career. I very much agree with your assessment there, Ian, and I am so excited to see her return. And I think we should be excited to see a statement here in the main event at UFC Vegas 31 going down at the UFC Apex Center tomorrow night. Islam Makhachev minus 720 versus Thiago Moises plus 500. This is a short notice bout, and that's probably why the odds are the way they are. But Islam Makhachev is a dominant force at lightweight, and I think this could be a statement win for him. Ian, do you think he makes a statement in this fight?
I don't think he has a choice here. You know, the problem that here's my thing when it comes to MMA, when it comes to prospects. We hear this like, oh, the next coming of Khabib, right? And he very well may be that, but I think we jumped the gun when he hasn't even fought someone like, I mean, Drew Dober was a good fighter. He dominated. That was excellent. I think Moises is a step back. And I don't mean that as disrespect to Thiago Moises. I mean in ranking, just like an experience in the octagon in general. You know, Islam should be fighting guys higher ranked. And if people are really declining fights, the UFC shouldn't allow that. I don't really think they do. I think there's a lot of chatter. Moises has gotten better. This will be, in my opinion, a very good education for him in the cage. Fighting someone who stylistically will be rough for him. You know, Moises' striking has gotten better. At the same time, that makes him more inclined to stand, which is like opposite of what he does as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. You know, we talked about this before. When black belts get a finish or have success in striking, they tend to get a little bit too comfortable there, and that's when they start losing and getting away from what got to their current success. I just think that Makhachev will be able to take this fight to the ground. You see when he does his double legs, he always lands in half guard, like half mount, like right away. Side mount, you know, it's like the guy's thinking 3 steps ahead of the shot. His kickboxing is very good. He doesn't really get hit all that much. He's good at keeping the distance. I think with Moises, who's a big ankle lock guy, Islam will be prepared for that based on his background in Sambo. So I like Makhachev here, minus 720, obviously way too high. So I don't mind even going under 4.5 in this one at plus odds. You know, for me, my interest in playing that is that if Makhachev wants to be the guy that retires Tony Ferguson, right? Or the guy that fights Beneil Dariush next, or someone who even gets a top 3 fight after fighting someone who's not in the top 10, he's got to finish. He's got to make a statement. He's got to do it. I would say within 3 rounds. All right. And from Moises, he just has to survive. If he goes all 5 rounds and doesn't lose that's an accomplishment in itself. This will be the toughest challenge to date. Islam Makhachev, I think, gets it done within the distance.
And I think you can't go out there and have the comments that you have about Dan Hooker and then lay a 25-minute ground and pound egg on Thiago Moises. You can't do it. You can't be talking that smack and then expect to get ranked as if you didn't do that performance. Sure. This is the entertainment game. It's not just about winning fights. It is about winning fights for these men and women, and we're very close to a lot of fighters. But at the end of the day, you have to entertain. And if you can go out there and get a finish against Thiago Moises, I, as a promoter, would then be able to match you up better. Whereas if you go out there and play the safe route, it's a little more difficult to do that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. You know, I think for him in this fight, look, if he comes out and 10-8s him in the first 4 rounds and they don't stop a fight after 4 10-8 rounds, that's not Islam's fault. You know, he's going to go in there and do what he does. He's going to, you know, throw that front kick. He's going to shoot in. He's going to ground and pound. But look, this is a guy that fishes for submissions. You know, his takedown rate was actually higher than Khabib's. You know, which is interesting. You know, if you go and look at the percentages and stuff, and you also look, he fishes for submissions way more than Khabib did. Khabib was more about control. This guy's more about finishing. He's a high IQ fighter. He's very intellectual with the way he performs things on the ground. He doesn't rush anything. I would be very shocked if he does not get the finish here, to be honest. Earlier in the week on Anik's show, I did say by decision. But as the week has gone on and I've really processed this and watched more on him and seen this is kind of if he just wins this by decision, it doesn't show me anything, even if it's dominant, right? Because that minus 720 screams that he's got to finish this fight in order to that minus 720 to mean anything going into the top 10.
And some high-level analysis there from Ian Parker, and that's why we grab him here for Combat Coach. I'm not going to recap the picks here. You can go back through it. We do it all for you in less than 20 minutes. We gave you a little opinion there to take it past the 15, so sorry for that. But this has been a Coach Picks production. I am Cody Merrow. That is the Duck Ian Parker. You can catch all of his picks on CBS Sportsline. Follow him at Ian Parker MMA, and we are out.